We're about to transform your PlayStation 2 Fat model into the ultimate PS2 Pro. This guide will help you install the incredible PlayStation Broadband Navigator software on a hard drive or solid-state drive. Then you'll be able to play backups of your favorite PS2 and PS1 games, watch videos, listen to music, look at pictures, connect your PS2 to the internet, and even turn your PlayStation 2 into a Linux-based computer. So fire up your PlayStation 2 Fat model in your computer because we're about to build the ultimate PS2 Pro. I have two overarching goals with this guide. The first one is to make this process as simple as possible. The other is to cover every single step that's necessary to get this process done, all the way up to 100% and not gloss over anything. It involves using both Windows and Linux, and I'm going to show you everything step by step that's needed to build the ultimate PS2 Pro with PSBBN. In order to build the ultimate PlayStation 2 Pro, you're going to need some accessories and parts to get this done. It starts with having an official Sony PlayStation 2 broadband network adapter. It has the Sony logo on the left, and on the right side there's a dial-up modem port and an Ethernet port on the back of the adapter. This adapter originally had an IDE hard drive interface. This specific unit has an IDE to SATA interface adapter installed internally. You might want to pick up one of these so that you can install it inside the original Sony network adapter in order to use modern SATA hard drives or SSDs. You'll need either a hard drive or solid-state drive to copy PSBBN to. In this case, I'm using this PNY 1TB solid-state drive. Since the hard drive bay in the PS2 is for 3.5-inch drives, and this is a 2.5-inch drive, you'll need an adapter like this one. It lets you mount a 2.5-inch drive into this 3.5-inch adapter, and then it will fit properly inside the PS2. It's got everything you need in the kit to get this done. You're going to need a way to connect that hard drive to your computer, and a dock like this one is the way to get it done. You can insert the drive, either 2.5 or 3.5-inch drives, right into the top of it. On the back, there's a power input and a USB-B port for connecting a B to A cable to your computer. One of the great benefits about a dock like this is it also allows you to clone drives by inserting the target drive and the original drive and just pressing one single button. You'll need a temporary storage USB drive to keep your PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1 backups for transferring them to the final version of PSBBN. In this case, I'm using this crucial 1TB SSD. And finally, you'll need some kind of storage device, either USB or SD card based, for copying over a version of Linux which we'll need to use for part of the process. In this case, I'm using this SanDisk Extreme 256GB microSD and an SD adapter connected by USB. You'll need a wired USB keyboard and a wired mouse for two purposes. The first one is to be able to boot Linux and have it recognize a keyboard and mouse. And the second one is you will be plugging these into the PlayStation 2 for some key functions for part of the PSBBN process. Now that you know what hardware you need, let's take care of the steps and windows that need to be done. First up, there's a key download that you'll need to grab, and I have it on my official website. I also have this link for you in the video description. Scroll down on this page and you'll see a big green download button. Navigate to that button and click on it to download the all-in-one zip file to your computer. Now that the download's complete, let's get this thing unpacked and take a look at what's inside. Open up a new instance of File Explorer and then navigate to your Downloads folder. You'll find a new download here called PS2 AIO PSBBN. Right-click on it and select Extract All. In the dialog window that appears, come down to Extract at the bottom right corner and click on it. Once the extract process is complete, you no longer need the zip file. Right-click on it and then click Delete to send it to the recycle bin. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at what's inside the newly uncompressed folder. Navigate to it and double-click. You're going to find two files in here. The first one is an image file for Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition. The second one is called Balena Etcher. This is used to write image files to either a USB drive or an SD card with a USB adapter. Wherever you plan to create a bootable Linux USB drive, in this case a microSD card, go ahead and insert that into your computer now. Once the drive has been recognized by Windows, you'll see a File Explorer window appear. You'll want to take this opportunity to identify the drive letter assigned to that drive by Windows. For this example, it's assigned letter L, and the drive is called Linux SD. This just helps prevent confusion moving forward to know which drive is inserted into the computer at any given time during this guide. Once you've identified the correct drive letter, you can close out that instance of File Explorer by clicking the red X in the right corner. Okay, now that you've identified the drive where you want to load Linux, it's time to run 𝐃𝐈𝐒𝐂𝐋𝐎. Double-click on it to load it for the first time. This file will install and launch 𝐃𝐈𝐒𝐿𝐿 for the first time automatically. Once you see the main interface for 𝐃𝐻ER, you'll need to tell it where the image is that you want to flash over to the SD card or USB drive. Click on this blue button here, and you'll see the File Explorer window appear where you can choose the location and the exact file that you want to flash. In this case, it's in the Downloads folder, and it's going to be in that All-in-One folder, so double-click into that. Inside there, you'll find the Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition image. Click on the file to select it, then come down to Open at the bottom right corner and click on it to lock in this selection. In the next menu choice, you'll need to tell 𝐃𝐈𝐿𝐿𝐿 where you want to write this file. Click on this blue button and you'll be presented with a list of detachable drives on your system. For this video, I'm using a SanDisk 256GB microSD card, but it actually says Sony here. The reason for that is it's identified the manufacturer of the SD to USB adapter rather than the microSD card itself. I wanted to make note of this just in case what you see on screen doesn't match the manufacturer of the SD card or USB drive that you've inserted into your own system. Once you've identified where you want to write the Linux image, click on it to put a checkbox next to it. Then click on the Select button to lock in this selection. For the third and final step, come over to the blue Flash button and click on it. You're going to see a pop-up confirmation message appear asking you to verify that you want to write to this specific drive. It's also going to tell you that anything that's on this drive is going to be erased in this process. Once you're sure, come over to Yes, I'm Sure and click on it to start the process. Then at the UAC prompt that appears, click on Yes to continue. While this is finishing up, it gives me a chance to tell you about my new book, From Pong to PlayStation, The History of Video Games. It's a deep dive into the game systems from all 9 generations. It features some well-known game consoles and also some really obscure ones that were just as much a part of the history of gaming as the heavy hitters. With 116 full-color pages of video game consoles and their history, you're sure to learn something new. You can get your copy of From Pong to PlayStation, The History of Video Game Consoles at the link in the video description. Back at 𝐃𝐈𝐿𝐿𝐿, once the writing process is complete, you'll see a confirmation message on screen. Once the writing process is complete and verified, you can click the X in the top right corner of the 𝐃𝐈𝐿𝐿𝐿 application to close it out. At this point, you're done with the all-in-one download. You can close out File Explorer and go back to the Windows desktop. Leave the USB drive or microSD card with the newly created Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition plugged into your computer. Before you transfer over to Linux, you'll need to copy over the PS2 and PS1 backups that you want to install on your PSBBN drive onto a second USB drive. It makes sense to go ahead and pre-name each of the folders for each of the types of content that you're going to copy over before you transfer over to Linux. In this case, I have 3 types of content here. The first one is a folder called CD for CD-based PS2 games, a folder called DVD for PS2 games in DVD format, and one called POPs for PS1 games. Let's take a quick look in each of these folders to see the types of contents that are here. For the CD-based games, they need to be in either .bin or .bin and .q format to work correctly. In the DVD folder, these need to be in either .iso or .zso format for PS2 games in DVD style format. And for POPs games, these need to be in what's called VCD or video CD format. It's not going to read them if you have them in bin.q format. You need to have these specifically in .vcd format or video CD format to work correctly with POPs. This stuff is all currently stored on a folder called Demo on my PC. You won't have a demo folder, it's just something I use on YouTube in order to facilitate the process. I'm going to grab this File Explorer window and then drag and drop it over to the left side of the screen and snap it into place here. Go ahead and insert the USB drive that you want to copy this content over to into your computer. Sometimes drives get picked up automatically by File Explorer and sometimes they don't. So if you run into that situation, open a second File Explorer window and open this PC. Now you'll see the USB drive that's attached. For this example, I've named it drive letter P and PS Games to make it easy to find in the next steps. Double-click on that drive, and I'm just going to take this window and snap it on the right side of the screen because I like to copy things from left to right. All right, go ahead and drag everything, the CD folder, DVD folder, and the POPs folder, all over to the root of the SD card or USB drive that you're going to use for storage. During the process of setting all this up, I found an extra step here that really makes things easier once you get into Linux. Create a new folder right on the root of your SD card or USB drive wherever you're saving your game content. Name that folder Games. Once you have the folder labeled correctly, drag all of the folders that you just created into the Games folder. This is going to make it a whole lot easier to set things up inside Linux once you get inside the terminal process and have to run some scripts to get things done. Okay, you're done shuffling files around in Windows. You can close out any open instances of File Explorer at this point. Not only are you done with File Explorer, you're done with Windows. Go ahead and shut down Windows. What we're going to do is we're going to boot your computer into Linux here in just a moment once Windows has completely shut down. Next up, let's get your computer booted into the Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition operating system. You'll need to restart your computer and access its boot menu. The key you press at startup is different from computer manufacturer to manufacturer, but in this case, for this Minisforum computer, it's the F7 key. Once you turn on your computer, start pounding that F7 key like it stole your lunch money. Give your system a moment and you should launch into the boot menu. This lets you choose which drive connected to your machine you want to use to boot. In this case, we want to use the Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition drive, which is actually listed once again here as the Sony drive because it recognized the attached SD card reader rather than the SD card itself, but it's there. Make sure your boot drive is highlighted and press the Enter key on your keyboard to select it. This will take you to the Linux boot menu. The first option, the one that's already highlighted, is the one that you want. Just press the Enter key on your keyboard to select it. This will boot your computer for the first time into the Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition. You'll see the Linux logo here on the splash screen while things are getting loaded up for the first time. Give things a moment to get settled in, and you'll be taken directly to the Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition desktop. And man, oh man, are things going to be really small on your display. Don't worry, I've got a solution for this right now to fix it. Let's access the display settings so that we can scale things up to something that can be easily seen. Right-click on the desktop and it'll pull out a pop-up menu. And yep, it's going to be super small too. Let's zoom in and take a closer look. Just like in Windows, you can access your display settings from this pop-out menu. Just bring the highlight down to about the middle of the menu and you'll see a listing here called Display Settings. Click on it with the left mouse button and you'll see this pop-up menu. Yeah, it's kind of smallish too. Let's zoom in. From the Display Settings menu, you can change the percent of scale or how large you want things to look on screen by adjusting the percentage numbers. By default, it's pretty much set to the lowest possible setting, which is why things look so small. In order to make things the easiest to read, especially if you're watching this on a mobile device like a mobile phone, I'm going to scale this all the way up. So that's going to be the 400% mark all the way on the right side of the screen. Just pick the percent of scale that works best for you for the display for ease of use. The change won't stick until you hit the Apply button at the bottom right corner of the screen, so don't forget to hit Apply before you exit the Display Settings menu. Once you hit Apply, you'll be asked to confirm if you want to keep the display settings that have been altered. To apply the settings, click on the Keep Changes button. Once you have the display settings dialed into your liking, you can click the X in the top right corner of the Display Settings window to go back to the Linux Mint desktop. Now that's more like it. I'm going to switch over to dark mode here, one, because it's easier on my eyes, and two, it actually is easier on folks that watch these videos on OLED screens because of the built-in automatic brightness leveling. Click the menu button in the bottom left corner. You're going to have access to a series of menu choices just like you would if you click the Windows Start button. Bring the pointer over the listing that says All Applications. From here, you can scroll down through all of the applications on the right side until you get to the listing that says Themes. Navigate to it using the mouse and left-click on it. From here, you can choose any kind of theme that's built into Linux that works for you. Of course, I'm looking for dark mode here, and that's the one that I'm going to use. By default, the Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition is set to light mode. To change it to dark mode, just hover over dark mode and left-click on it. It will instantly transform all of this overly bright stuff into something that's much easier on the eyes. Once you've found the theme that works for you, you can close out the Themes option by clicking on the X in the right corner. A quick note here before proceeding. You'll need to have either wired or wireless internet access in Linux for the next step. In this case, I have an Ethernet cable plugged right into the back of the desktop. Because I have an Ethernet cable plugged into the back of this desktop computer, I didn't have to configure anything for it to go online in Linux. We're going to grab some software from the GitHub, but before you can do that, you'll need to install 2 sets of updates. This is done through the Linux terminal. It looks just like the old DOS prompt that you saw in Windows or in DOS, but it's just different sets of commands. Right-click on the Linux desktop again. You'll see a listing here that says Open in Terminal. Hover over it with the pointer and left-click. This is going to open up the Linux terminal window. I'll go ahead and maximize it by clicking in the right corner to give us some additional screen real estate. Don't worry, if you're not familiar with using Linux terminal commands, I'm going to walk you through it step by step. It's super easy. The first part of this process is you need to update Linux itself. Just type in the following command, sudo space apt space update, and hit the enter key on your keyboard. You'll see a list of files being downloaded and installed to your Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition installation disk. Just give your system a minute to get things downloaded, installed, and ready to go for the next step. Okay, since the cursor's all the way down at the bottom of the screen here, I'm actually just going to press the enter key on the keyboard a handful of times, just to kind of push the text out of the way to make it a little easier to see for the next step. Next, at the command prompt, type sudo space apt space install space git. Then press the enter key on your keyboard. You'll see a text confirmation prompt asking you if you want to continue. You do, so press Y on the keyboard and then press the enter key to continue. This installs an application to your boot disk that allows Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition to clone a repository of files from the GitHub onto your boot disk. The process only takes a moment, and once it's done, you'll be back at the command prompt inside the Linux terminal. Before you enter the next command into the terminal, you'll need to grab a web address link off of the GitHub in order to paste it in. There's a copy of Firefox pre-installed with the Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition, and you can access it right here at the bottom left corner of the screen. Just hover over the icon for Firefox and left-click on it to launch it for the first time. You'll need to go to a specific web address. I'm going to link it in the video description, but unless you're already in Linux, you'll need to pay attention on screen so that you can grab that link and enter it in to Firefox in Linux. So it's going to be on the GitHub. So it's github.com/𝐃𝐈𝐒𝐂𝐋𝐎�. Then press the enter key on your keyboard to access this GitHub repository. 𝐃𝐈𝐒𝐂𝐋𝐎� is the extraordinary developer that set up this entire process to be done through Linux. Consider leaving a donation like I've done in order to support the project. Look for the web link that says PSBBN Definitive English Patch. Navigate to it with the pointer and left-click on it to access this page. Somewhere around the top center of the page, you're gonna see a green button that says code and has a drop-down arrow next to it. Remember how I said you have to copy in a web address into terminal for the third step inside terminal? This is where you get it. Hover over that drop-down arrow next to code and left-click on it. This is gonna pop out an action menu. From here, you'll see the web address that represents this entire file repository on the GitHub. Hover over Copy URL to Clipboard and left-click on it. Now you don't have to manually type that entire address in the terminal in the next step. Cool. Now go back to the terminal window where you paused right here at the terminal command prompt. I'll hit enter a few times to clear up the screen to make this easier to see. Type in the following: git space clone space, and then right-click and select paste. This will paste in that entire web address so that you don't have to manually type it in. Don't mind that the text colors are inverted, that's an expected behavior. Just press the enter key on your keyboard. This is going to clone that GitHub repository right onto your boot disk for Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition. Just like before, when you're done, you'll be back at the command prompt. Except for that this time, you're done typing in commands to terminal. All you have to do to close out the terminal window is just go up to the right corner and click on the X to go back to the Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition desktop. You've cloned the GitHub repository. Let's get it opened up and run 3 scripts that are necessary to set things up. In this case, the repository is cloned right on the desktop. Double-click on the PSBBN repository, and you'll see a series of folders and files here. By the way, if you don't see the repository folder on your desktop, just click on that File Explorer window at the bottom left corner of the screen, and you should see it in your home folder. Locate 3 different scripts inside this folder. You'll need to run these in sequential order for things to work correctly. They're actually numbered 01 02, and 03. Locate the one that starts with 01 and has the name setup in the file name. It also has a .sh extension. Double-click on this to open it up. Once you double-click on it, you'll be asked what action you want to take. Don't click on Run on the right corner of this pop-out. Instead, navigate over to the far left of this pop-out and click on Run in Terminal. This will reopen the terminal window and run the script. I'm going to blow up the terminal window to make it full screen here. You'll be notified that it's going to install some necessary files and folders in your Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition boot disk to make things work properly for the next steps coming up. It says press any key to continue, but what I found is you'll need to press the Enter or Return key on your keyboard to proceed forward through the process. Some additional files and folders necessary to install PSBBN on your hard drive or solid-state drive will be installed to the boot disk. Depending upon the speed of your computer and the speed of your storage media, it can take several minutes for this process to complete. Don't press any keys on the keyboard or click anything on the mouse, no matter what you see at the bottom of the screen, until you see this message. Setup completed successfully, press any key to exit. Press the Enter key or Return key on your keyboard to exit the terminal. Before you start the second script, go ahead and insert your hard drive or solid-state drive into the dock. You'll feel its seat inside the SATA connector inside the dock and go down with a satisfying press. Then connect the USB cable to your computer and power on the dock. This drive is formatted in expat format and it's completely empty. This is the drive that I'm going to use to create PSBBN to run in the PlayStation 2 itself. You can close out this File Explorer window as we'll need to identify the drive somewhat uniquely in the second and third steps ahead. Okay, inside that GitHub cloned repository, locate number 2 script. It's the one that says 02 and it has PSBBN in the title. It also has SH as the extension. Double-click on it, and once again, don't click Run. Come over to Run in Terminal and click Run in Terminal instead. I'll come up to the top of this window and then click to maximize it to take up the full screen real estate. Alright, this is a super important step, and you need to make sure that you follow this very carefully so you do write PSBBN to the correct drive and don't overwrite the wrong one. Along the left side of the screen are all of the storage devices connected to your computer in Linux. For this example, remember that I connected a PNY 1TB SSD and it's clearly labeled right here. I even named this drive PS2 SSD to make it even easier to identify inside Terminal. You'll need to identify the drive name that's been assigned to your drive by Windows. It will always start with /dev/something. For this example, it's assigned /dev/SDB. Now that you know exactly which drive is designated in Linux as the drive that you want to write PSBBN to, type in that exact designation at the prompt. So it's going to be /dev/SDB in this case. Then hit the Enter or Return key on your keyboard. This is why it's super important to identify the correct drive, because it's about to erase and overwrite all of the content on that drive. Double check to be completely certain that you have the correct drive designation identified. Once you know for sure, you can type Yes here at the prompt and press the Enter or Return key on your keyboard to continue. Because I'm using an SSD here and a quality USB dock, this process only took about 8 minutes. What's taking place in this process is it's not only copying over PSBBN to the solid-state drive, it's allocating the first 120 gigabytes of the drive to OPL, the Open PS2 loader. That's what's going to empower you to load backups of your PS2 games. Once this part of the process is complete, you'll see a message at the bottom of the screen to press any key to continue. Press Enter or Return on your keyboard to continue. At the beginning of the video, I mentioned that you could play backups of your music files using PSBBN. You'll need to allocate part of the hard drive space to do this. You can allocate anywhere between 10 and 40 gigabytes. Since this is a 1 terabyte drive, I've got plenty of room. Type in the number between 10 and 40 for the amount of gigabytes you want to allocate to your music, and then press the Enter or Return key on your keyboard. You'll be asked to confirm this setting because once you've allocated this space, it's not something you can go back and do without reformatting and installing PSBBN again. Once you've confirmed the amount of gigabytes that you want to allocate in this partition for music, type Y for yes and press the Enter or Return key to continue. Next, you'll be asked to decide how much space you want to allocate to PS1 games, or what's called the POPs folder games. It's a minimum of 10 gigabytes and a maximum of 53. I've got lots of room on this 1 terabyte drive, so 53 gigabytes it is. type in the number of gigabytes that you want to allocate to your PS1 games and press enter on your keyboard. Once again, to confirm the number of gigabytes allocated to the PS1 storage, type Y and then press enter on your keyboard. The script is going to set up the first 120 gigabytes for PSBBN, and then the rest of the storage is going to be in exFAT format. Once everything's done, you'll see a confirmation message at the bottom of the screen. Press enter on the keyboard to exit. This will take you back to the folder with the 3 scripts in it. Before you run the 3rd script, go ahead and connect the USB drive that has the backups of your PS2 and PS1 games. Just like before, when you connected the dock, you'll see a File Explorer window appear with the content on your drive. Remember how we put those folders in a subfolder called Games? Well, here it is. And this step is exactly why we created a Games subfolder rather than just leaving those Games folders right on the root of the drive. Right-click on the folder, then come down to Copy and select it with the left mouse button. We're actually going to copy this as a path to the location where your games are stored on your external storage for script number 3. Go back to the cloned GitHub folder and double-click on script number 3. But pay attention because this is important. Don't click Run in Terminal yet. Instead, click on the menu choice that says Display. Super low contrast text notwithstanding, if you take a look at the bottom of this window, you'll see a path listing for game. Right now, the default for that path is the games folder inside that GitHub repository that you cloned. However, you don't need to copy the games over to Linux and then install them over to the solid state or hard drive for your PS2. Here's what you do instead. To tell it that the games are actually installed on your external storage, highlight the path between the 2 quotation marks. You need to preserve the quotation marks here or things are not going to work correctly. Then right-click and select Paste. This will paste the path to your games folder on your external storage rather than using the pre-existing one in Linux. Now when you run script 3, it'll know where to find your game content. To lock in this change, go up to File at the top of the window and left-click. Then come down to Save and left-click on it, and you'll have this change saved in the script. Now you can close out this editor window by clicking the X in the top right corner. Now that you have this change saved, you can run the script as you normally would the other 2 scripts. Double-click on script number 3, and then click on Run in Terminal on the left side, just like you did with the other 2 scripts. This will open a terminal window again so you can copy over your game content. You'll see an explanation of what's happening in the next step here on screen. Just press enter or return on your keyboard to go to the next step. Just like you did with the 2nd script, you'll need to identify the drive that represents the PSBBN drive. It's going to be the exact same thing that it was previously. So just like before for this drive, it's /dev/SDB. But don't rely on what you see on screen. Use the indicator for your own drive here in this prompt. Then press enter on your keyboard, and it will copy your game content over to your PSBBN drive. But something truly awesome also happens at the same time. It's also going to go online, look for and download any art assets for your games that it can find. But it's also doing something else that's even more super cool. If it doesn't find art assets for the games that you have in your library, it's going to make note of it and add those art assets to the downloader in the future. The amount of time all of this takes depends on 2 factors. The first one is how many games are you copying over to the PSBBN drive, and the other one is how fast is the drive that you have in the dock. In this case, it only took a handful of minutes to knock out the whole thing, but if you have a really large game library, you might want to go anywhere between grabbing yourself your favorite cup of joe or an entire meal. Either way, the end result of all of this is well worth the wait. Alright, we're in the home stretch of using Linux. Once this process is complete, you'll see a message at the bottom of the screen to press any key to exit. Press enter or the return key on your keyboard to close out the terminal. It's worth noting that to add or remove games in the future, you can just add or remove them from the games folders and the PS2 or PS1 subfolders on your external storage. Then all you have to do is boot up Linux again, connect the external storage, and run script number 3. It will take care of everything for you. At this point, you're done with this GitHub repository. You can come up to the top right corner of this File Explorer window and close out it and any other open File Explorer windows from your desktop in Linux. Let's go ahead and shut down Linux. Come to the menu button in the bottom left corner and click on it. There's a red power button icon in the bottom left corner of the popped out window. Left click on it. Then in the list of choices on screen, come over to the red shutdown button and left click on it to shut down Linux and your computer. Remove the Linux boot drive from your computer so you can boot back into Windows normally the next time you power on your computer. But hang on to that Linux drive for future use. You can also remove the backup drive with your PS2 and PS1 games on it from your computer. Consider keeping it stored right next to your Linux boot drive. Great, let's go ahead and set up the solid-state drive or hard drive you're using for use with your PlayStation 2 system. First, remove the SSD or hard drive from the dock. If you're using a 2.5-inch drive, like in this case this SSD, and I highly recommend that you do, you'll need to install it into a 2.5-inch to 3.5-inch drive adapter like this one. It has a SATA pass-through connector inside of it so that you can connect the SSD inside and then connect the outside of the adapter to the SATA port. To install the drive into this adapter bay, all you've got to do is just line it up with the pins facing inward. Then just put it into the adapter and push it down. Once again, you'll get that satisfying press when you push it down and it locks into place properly. Then it's just a matter of using the provided screws to screw the drive down into the adapter to hold everything into place securely. Piece of cake, right? By the way, just in case you were wondering if it'll all fit in the dock once you put it in the adapter, yes, it will. I find that the easiest way to connect the drive to the PlayStation broadband adapter is to put the broadband adapter face down. This will face its connecting port upward. And you could just line up the solid-state drive or hard drive with the adapter's connection port and then just press it down into place gently until it's seated and aligned correctly. Insert the PlayStation broadband adapter and the connected drive into the hard drive bay on the back of the PlayStation 2. You'll feel it seat into place properly when it's completely flush on both sides against the back of the console. Secure this whole thing to the back of the PlayStation 2 with a flathead screwdriver. This will make sure it doesn't slip out during gameplay and doesn't fall out accidentally. To connect internet to the PlayStation 2, insert an Ethernet cable into the rightmost port on the back of the adapter. The left port was for the older dial-up connections. Hey, remember at the beginning of this video I mentioned you need to have a hardwired keyboard and mouse in order to run Linux? Well, you can also use these to your advantage on your PlayStation 2. Go ahead and insert the USB cables from the USB keyboard and the USB mouse into the open USB ports on the front left of your PlayStation 2. We'll put these to work here in just a moment. Alright, you've put in the work, now it's time to enjoy the rewards. Let's launch PSBBN. Press the power button on your PlayStation 2 and you are about to be greeted with a completely new experience. And not just that, it's not in Japanese anymore. It's all been translated over to English. I mean, how cool is this? A quick note here, because this was originally from the Japanese region, circle and X are swapped. If you're like me and you've never replaced the CR2032 battery in your PlayStation 2, you'll need to set the date and time. Press circle to do this. You'll be asked what time zone you're in the world. In this case, I'm in the Eastern United States. It's already selected here by default, so I'll just press the circle button to lock in this setting. You'll be asked whether or not you're currently in daylight savings time. Since it's not at the time of this video, I'll select standard winter time with the circle button. Now you can enter the correct date and time. Bear in mind that time entry is in military time or 24-hour time rather than 12-hour time. The default year for this is the year 2000. I mean, can the PlayStation 2 really be 25 years old? It sure is, and it's absolutely incredible that projects like this are still being put together for the PS2 a quarter of a century into its lifetime. In that sense, it's kind of like me, old, not obsolete. Once you have the date and time settings confirmed, press the circle button. You'll be notified that these settings can be changed at a later time if you like. Sounds good to me. Press the circle button to continue. It knows that the broadband adapter was used with a different system and that new internet connection settings need to be made. Select Start with Circle. You'll be asked whether you want to use PPPoE. For the default settings for this, you can just select Do Not Use with the circle button. You'll be asked if you want to set up your IP address automatically. Absolutely yes. Come up to Auto using the D-pad and then select Auto with Circle. You'll be asked about your DNS. Come up to Auto and select it with the circle button. At this point, your connection to the internet through your PlayStation 2 is ready to go. Press right on the D-pad, and you'll be asked whether or not you want to change your router settings. Yeah, not really. Make sure you select Do Not Change with the circle button. The next screen will tell you you're saving your internet connection settings and connecting to the internet. Select OK with the circle button. Your settings will be saved, and your PS2 will attempt to connect to the internet. Hey, let me know down in the comments if this is the first time you've ever tried connecting a PS2 to the internet, or even seen a PS2 connect to the internet. Once the test is complete, you'll see a confirmation message on screen that the test was successful. Press the X button on the controller to go back and give your system a moment. settings, and you'll be officially launched into the PSBBN main menu. It's a gorgeous interface, and it completely transforms the look and feel of how you use your PlayStation 2. Let's go check out the games. Select channels with the circle button. You'll have access to 4 different channels here, including a games channel. Select games with the circle button. You're going to see a number of different choices here, most of which are related to connecting to the archives from the original PlayStation network. What you're looking for is the collection setting. Scroll down to collection and select it with circle. The amount of time it takes to load your collection is largely dependent upon the number of games that you have in it. You're going to see 2 settings here, collection and disk. Disk is if you have a physical disk loaded, but since you want your backups, select collection with circle. And this is where the backups of your PS2 and PS1 games live. Not only can you launch your games from here, but all of the artwork was previously downloaded in the Linux steps, and it's all available right here in cover flow form. Your games will be in alphabetical order in the cover flow listings. I mean, just take a look at this. It's absolutely breathtaking compared to the original way that PlayStation games were loaded, and it's even nicer looking than the OPL interface itself for launching games. Just to make sure everything's working as you expect, go ahead and test to make sure that you can actually load a game inside PSBBN. How about God of War? Select the game in the cover flow listings with the circle button to launch it. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I'd think turning off the PS2 while trying to load the game would be counterproductive. What's really awesome is the games load pretty fast. Here's God of War running and ready to roll. To get back to the PSBBN interface, you can power off the system or temporarily just press the power button on the front to reset the system. Hey, remember how I mentioned earlier there was online content archived in the Games channel? From inside the Games channel, instead of going to Collection, you can go to one of the menu choices underneath it and see the preserved archives from the original online content. These aren't sections for downloading games. They're actually for downloading media and other kinds of content that you can play inside PSBBN. For example, there are a number of playable videos archived here, and it's worth taking a look. I'm going to go up to the listing for Konami here, and then with it highlighted, I'll select Konami with the circle button. Prepare for a white screen for just a moment. You see, these archives are actually being loaded online in real time, just like they would have been back in the day. And since the Ethernet port on the back of the PlayStation broadband adapter maxes out at 100 megabits a second, that's going to be the bottleneck here. But that's the Konami page loading in real time. By the way, it's going to go offline on August 31st, 2007. Just saying. Okay, with this page loaded up, I'm going to press the circle button here so we can take a look at what kind of content is available. Once again, this archive is loading in real time online, and during that process, the screens may black out or stop on completely white screens from time to time. These are expected behaviors, and they're just part of getting this content from the archives. It only takes a moment, and you'll be taken to the archive for the Konami video files. From here, you'll see a number of different videos that you can download directly to your PlayStation 2 hard drive or solid-state drive and watch inside PSBBN. Let's put this to the test. I'm going to slide over a couple of times to the right to select a video. Once you find the video that you want to download and watch, select it with the circle button. You'll see some information about the video file you're about to download and its size, in this case 46 megabytes. To download the file, come over to Yes with the D-pad and select Yes with the circle button. It took about 5 minutes in real time to download the video. I'm not going to make you watch this whole download process in real time. I think your time would be better spent watching paint dry or maybe grass grow. Once the download is done, you'll be asked if you want to watch the video right now. You can, but in this case, I'm going to select No because I want to show you how to access your downloaded content from the channels inside PSBBN. So I'm going to slide over to No here and select it with the circle button. This is going to take us back to the main menu inside the Konami channel for accessing video content. Okay, from here, now that we've got a video downloaded, let's head over to the video channel so we can try it out. To back out of the Konami channel or any of the other archive channels, press the X button on the controller. Yeah, get ready for the jarring white screen again. It's going to reload the main title page for the Konami channel, just like it did when you first accessed it. Once again, to go back, press the X button on the controller. This will take you all the way back to the Games channel. To access the channel for playing videos, press X to go back. From here, you'll have that list of the 4 channels you can access. Press to the left with the D-pad and you'll have access to the Movie channel. Select it with the circle button to open this channel. You'll have 2 options on the left, Favorites and Collection. To see the video that you downloaded, come down to Collection with the D-pad and select it with the circle button. You'll be presented with two choices on the left side of the screen, Collection and Disc. Since this isn't a DVD, it's a downloaded piece of content, select Collection with the circle button. Movie files aren't stored in one big clump, they're actually sorted out into albums. Select the album with the circle button. It's inside these albums that you'll find the video content that you've downloaded. For example, here's the soccer video that I downloaded from the archives of the PlayStation Online content. To launch your video, just make sure you have it highlighted and press the circle button. And just like that, your PS2 is now playing downloaded video content. I mean, how amazing is this that this is even a thing in 2025? Along with downloading videos to the archives, you can also rip your CDs onto the hard drive or solid-state drive and play them as backed up music files. Start by inserting your CD of choice. In this case, this is Chicago Greatest Hits Live from 2018. It's an incredible concert and I definitely recommend checking it out. So right now, everything is still based on playing directly off of the disc. There's no artist, no title, and no track names. I'm going to rip this disc to the solid-state drive so that we can add all of that information using the USB keyboard you plugged in earlier. Alright, you can slide over to the transport controls using the D-pad. They have the typical controls for rewinding, playing, pausing, fast-forwarding, and so forth. But if you follow it all the way over to the right, there's a small red dot there. That's the record button. That's the thing that rips CDs to the solid-state drive or hard drive. To rip a disc, select the record button with the circle button on the controller. You'll see a confirmation screen appear, make sure the highlight is on yes, and press the circle button to rip the disc to your internal PS2 storage. If you haven't ripped a CD on a 25-year-old optical drive before, well, it's kind of a slow process. In this case, this CD took about 10 minutes to rip to the internal solid-state drive on this PS2 fat model. Once it's done, you'll get a confirmation message on screen. Select back with the X button on the controller to go back. Here's the thing, the CD has been ripped to the solid-state drive in what's called A-track format, so it doesn't have the capability of playing MP3s just in case you were planning to try to copy MP3s directly to the drive. What you see on screen is still the disc version and not the ripped version of the music. Start by ejecting the disc by pressing the eject button on the face of the PS2 system. Getting to the ripped music library is just like trying to get to the video or photo libraries. It's actually going to be on its own channel. Because I inserted a disc and ripped it to the solid-state drive, we're already in the music channel. So just press X. From here, you can go from disc up to collection just like you would if you had gone in directly through the channels list. Go to collection and press circle. Just like when you import images, importing music puts things into albums, and in this case it's called Album 1. It's supposed to be called Greatest Hits Live. To update this, start by pressing triangle for options, then come down to the listing for information and hit circle on the controller again. See how the highlight is already on album name? Press the circle button on the controller and you can change the album name from here. This is one of the main reasons to have a keyboard plugged into your PlayStation 2. Oh, there's a virtual keyboard that you can use on screen by pressing the select button and cycling from Japanese to English. However, being able to type right on a real keyboard that you had to use anyway for setting up Linux makes this so much easier. Once you've typed in your album name, press the enter key on your keyboard twice. The first time will go from entry, and then the second time will save the album name to the album in PSBBN. You can also change the artist name from here by scrolling down with the D-pad to artist and selecting it with circle. And then just like before, you can use the physical keyboard or the virtual keyboard to change this information. In this case, I'm just going to backspace right over it and use that physical keyboard plugged right in over USB. Awesome! Press enter twice and you'll be back at the information screen. Press X to go back, and you'll see that the data that you entered has been updated on the album listing in PSBBN. To edit the names of the tracks for the album, go up to Collection and press the circle button. You'll see the listing of all of the tracks here just like you did with the physical disc. To update the track name, press triangle for options. Then come down to the listing for information just like you did with the album title and artist and select it with circle. Once it loads up, you'll notice that it has already updated the album and artist information for the track automatically based on the entries that I made earlier. Now it's just a matter of selecting the track name with circle, backspacing over the track name, and typing in the correct track name. Just like with the artist and album name, Press enter on the keyboard twice, once to lock it in and once to apply the change to the track. Perfect. Now the track name, the artist name, and the album name are all associated with track number 1 on this disc. Press the X button to go back to the options menu, and then press it again to go back to the album. Now you'll see that all of the changes that we made to the album, the artist, and the track are displayed at the player level when you go to play the music in your collection. Importing images into PSBBN requires a few extra steps. They'll need to be manually imported using external storage. I'm going to go ahead and plug in a USB drive in FAT32 format into this Windows computer so that we can get access to the root of the drive. You'll need to create a folder right on the root of the drive. Select New in Folder, and then name this folder Picture, no S on the end, just the word Picture. Once you've created that folder on the drive, navigate to it and double-click into it. I'm going to take this File Explorer window and drag it over to the right side of the screen and snap it into place. I actually have a JPEG image pre-staged here on the drive. It's called Your Humble Narrator. You can copy your JPEG images over to the Pictures folder on your removable storage drive. Remove the USB drive from your PC and insert it into an open USB port on your PlayStation 2. Back at the main menu of PSBBN, go back into the Channels section by selecting it with circle. There's going to be a channel here, if you press over to the right twice, for Photo. Select Photo with the circle button to open the channel. You'll have 2 listings here, one that's called Favorites and one that's called Collection. Use the D-pad to move the highlight from Favorites to Collection and select Collection with the circle button. Because there's no photo content previously uploaded to the system, it's going to say that there's no content here. To get it imported from your USB connected drive, come down to the listing for Digital Camera and select it with circle. Yeah, I know it says Digital Camera and you've put in a USB drive, but it's going to be able to pull the data from it just the same. The PS2 uses USB 1.1 speed, so it can take a little time for things to load. Once it's located your picture folder and your picture content, you'll see previews of it on screen. Hey, there's your humble narrator in his gaming space, repping his favorite band. To import an image, start by selecting it with the circle button. Remember earlier how we copied over the contents of the Chicago CD to the drive using the red record button? This is going to use the exact same process. Select the red button next to transfer with circle, and at the confirmation screen, select yes with circle to transfer your images to the internal storage on your PS2. This is in real time, and if you're looking at this going, geez, this is really slow, it's that USB 1.1 technology at work. Just be aware if you have a lot of images, it can take a little while to copy them all over to the internal storage. Once your images have been successfully copied over, you'll see a notice on screen. Press X on the controller to go back. At this point, with your content copied over, you can remove the USB drive from your PS2 and optionally plug the mouse back in. We'll need to transition from Digital Camera to Collection. Press X to go back 1 level. This time, instead of going into Digital Camera, go up on the D-pad to move the highlight up to Collection and select Collection with the circle button. Just like when you import music, it creates an album and it gives it an arbitrary album name. Let's change it to something that's better recognizable. Select the album with the circle button to go into it. Press the triangle button and it will open up the options menu. Just like with CDs, you can go down to Information with the D-pad, and with the highlight on Information, select it with the circle button. This is going to give you access to edit the album name. If you don't have a keyboard plugged in, you can access the virtual keyboard on screen and change it from Japanese to English by pressing select. But just like with music, changing these names with a real keyboard is going to be much easier. Select the album name with the circle button, and then you can go in and backspace over the album name and type in something that makes better sense to you. What to name this album? I think I'll name this album Subscribe. I mean, if you've made it this far in the video and haven't subscribed yet, the time has arrived to smash the subscribe button and ring the bell. Well, whatever you name your album, press the Enter key on your keyboard twice, once to lock in the change and once to go back. And now you'll see that your album name has been updated. Press the X button to go back and you'll see that the album name has also been applied at the viewer level. Nice! From the main menu of PSBBN, you can access what's called a navigator menu. If you press the select button on the controller, it pops out a side menu. This is called the navigator menu. It probably looks familiar to you if you've been around the PS2 modding scene for a while, because most of the stuff that's there is similar to the content you'd find on a free-made boot card. There's one super interesting addition to this though. You can actually send and receive and check your email from inside your PS2 using the mail option shown here. And here comes the craziest part of all. You can actually run Linux on your PlayStation 2. Power off your PlayStation 2. Before you turn it back on, press and hold any button on the controller. In this case, I'm just going to press and hold the X button. But press and hold a button on the controller, then turn your PS2 back on. When your system is booting up, it's not going to look like anything different is happening. Just continue to hold the button on the controller through the splash screens and the initial loading screen for PSBBN. Continue to hold the button and you'll see that Linux will start loading on your PlayStation 2. You'll see a series of text crawling across the screen. Don't worry about it, that's part of the Linux loading process. What you're looking for is the sign-in prompt for the user ID and password so that you can get logged onto this version of Linux on your PS2. Okay, there it is. For all of the copies of PSBBN and Linux, the user ID is root, lowercase ROOT, and the password is password, all lowercase. Type in the login ID, hit enter, type in the password, hit enter. You'll see this confirmation message on screen once you have it entered in properly. So you're actually in Linux, but you're not at the Linux desktop yet. There's one more step to do. At this prompt, type in the following: Start X, STARTX, all lowercase, and then hit enter on your keyboard. Give the hamster a minute to get running in the wheel, and sure enough, you're going to be at the Linux desktop on your PlayStation 2. This is the other reason that I suggested not only connecting a keyboard, but connecting a mouse. You now have access to a real working computer running Linux, and you can control the cursor on screen using the mouse. This, my friend, is PS2 Pro level stuff. It's amazing that you can do all of this with your PlayStation 2, but if using Linux to set all this up isn't your jam, there's another way to go about it and still get a lot of value. Learn how to set up a solid-state drive on your PS2 fat model using nothing more than exFAT and Windows. This video will show you how to get it done.